So why did you decide to join the park board?
Well, I noticed that there was a call for applicants to sit on the board as ministerial appointments, and as I live on the south side, I've been there for about 20 years, I thought it was an amazing opportunity to get involved and shape the future of the park. It's an area I'm passionate about, I know it really well, or at least I thought I did until I joined the board, and since then I've learnt a lot of other things about it.
I think that's true. I think since I joined the board last year as well, I've found so many parts of the park that I would never have come across if I'd not been on the board, and it's been a real learning journey. I think all board members find that. So do you want to tell us a bit more about what, as a board member, you have done in your last 3 and a bit years since your appointment?
I have learnt a lot about planning, and I really enjoy the planning meetings now. It took a little bit of time to really understand our responsibilities and what we were determining in planning, and I joined the Communications and Engagement Board, which is all about communicating what we're doing, but also engaging with visitors, with local businesses, and with the public at large and wider stakeholders, and that's been a really interesting journey. I have been involved with Inclusive Cairngorms and the Outdoor Access Trust, which is path building, and I've also been involved quite a lot with Europark, which is the European Federation for Protected Areas. So quite a varied area, I guess.
So absolutely, we've got a really wide selection of, and that's just a small selection of some of the opportunities board members have to get involved with. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the Europark involvement though, because obviously we've just had a Europark conference here in the Cairngorms. People might have seen some of the publicity about it. Do you want to describe a bit more about that?
Yes, I've been to a couple of the Europark conferences in Europe. It's held every year in a different park, but not necessarily a national park. Different kinds of issues, but there's always something that, some common issues which are interesting to discuss from an international perspective. I was on the steering committee for the Europark conference that was held in Aviemore, so it's taken about a year of preparation with staff and with the Europark Federation. And then it was a very successful conference, the biggest one ever, more than 600 delegates. And I have been invited to join the council, so I now sit on the Europark Council as well.
In terms of the Europark conference we had this year, obviously there was the Europark Youth Manifesto was the centrepiece of that. We have today had a board meeting where we approved a strategy going forward about co-creating with young people involvement in park decision making, but we have an opportunity here with direct elections coming up for younger people to stand for the park, and what would you say for a young person they could get out of joining the board?
Well, I think that's for you to answer. I think we've done incredibly well following the Europark commitment to young people to elect you as the convener, and I think you've proved admirably in the last couple of months that someone of your age is more than capable of taking on a very responsible role, and I think that's a very good example for us oldies, because I'm sure 1 or 2 people raise their eyebrows, and then I think that also it's a really good example for other young people, and perhaps you should say a bit about what you're getting out of it as a young person. Oh, before you do that, I think it's really important not to segregate young people. I think it's just as important to include everybody. I'm quite inclusive. Absolutely.
I think we're doing really well as a public board. We have a good range of gender, and we have a better range of age than most public boards do, and it's good to have that mix, and the directly elected are obviously coming from their communities generally, and have a strong association with the place that they're from, and that's really positive as well. And the board, to me, has a really good dynamic between the mix of ministerial appointments, directly elected council appointees. We've got a good mix of that, gender, age, etc. I think it's really positive, and from my point of view as a young person, what I get out of the board is that I want to have a part in the long-term future of the park. What does that look like? What does the place I live in the future? What is the policies and the placemaking going to look like through? We've just approved the LVP for consultation today, and that has a huge impact on people's lives, whether they realise it or not. and that is a really good opportunity as a board member to have that say in the future of the park.
Very important as well, not to be daunted. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue for someone young. I think it's potentially an issue for anyone who hasn't sat on a public board before, not to be daunted. And I think the park board is very inclusive and supportive. I hadn't sat on a public board before, and I wasn't sure how long it would take me to understand the workings and machinations of everything, but people were so helpful and so inclusive, both the board members and the staff. So I would like to encourage people to stand for election because they want to represent their area and be involved in the park, but also because it's quite an exciting opportunity to learn all sorts of new things and not to be daunted by the position.
Absolutely, and I think in terms of the training, obviously board members get a lot of training.
Yeah, we do.
And when the new director elected get elected, about 10 days later, roughly 2 weeks later, there's going to be board training, as we found out today, for the whole board. So everyone's going to be in the same boat, doing the training, because it's really positive as part of being a collective that we do that together and build on our strengths together. So because I think possibly one of the barriers people think is, oh, I don't know enough about anything, but you don't have to be an expert. I think that's a key aspect of things.
No, you don't have to be an expert. You do have to read the papers very carefully, and I think all of us on the board have asked useful questions. Almost all of us have asked a question that perhaps wasn't relevant, but we didn't realise it, but the staff are very good at keeping us in line, and so is the convener. So when something's going off course, or someone's more passionate than perhaps they ought to be, the convener keeps us in line, and generally I think they're very civilised affairs, despite the fact that passions run quite high on either side occasionally. But the key thing is to be informed, to read the papers carefully, and to not be afraid of asking any questions, because it needs to be a debate.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key point, is that you over time will come to know what is and isn't appropriate question to ask, but also once you've had a bit of that experience, you learn which questions are the good ones to ask and what will actually get
exactly.
more out of it.
But I think that it's a very open atmosphere. You feel like you can ask any kind of question, but as you say, yes, you do learn eventually which ones are going to get a better kind of answer and enlighten everyone as to the key issues.
And we're a very friendly board, I would say.
We're a very friendly board.
I think we came on last year, and I've not had any issues, and I think that's a positive thing. People are often concerned about coming into a new environment with new people where they perhaps don't know anyone.
The board, the staff, and the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are, I think that's a useful point actually in terms of place. We are obviously here today in the new offices in Granton-on-Spey, but we move around the park, and it's a really good opportunity for people to see all the different parts of the park. And from our point of view as board, it's important to be in these different communities, to see them, and to get that feel for what's going on in different communities, and allow those communities to come and hear what we're saying on their behalf.
Yeah.